Hey there, I'm Sarah Zarella, a portrait and wedding photographer and your host for Wedding Secrets Unveiled. This is a podcast where we cut through the complexity of wedding planning, leaving you with everything you need to know directly from the industry experts. If you want to simplify your wedding planning while having fun, of course, you came to the right place. Join me while I guide you through your planning, starting from your engagement to your big day where you say, I do. After photographing for the past 19 years, I am sharing with you tips and tricks to cut through the excess noise because I believe from the moment you said yes, your planning experience should be a magical time in your life. Here you will find episodes that are fun, stress-free, and straight to the point with a fresh, honest take on the reality of what you really need to know about planning your perfect day. Let's dive in. Well, welcome back to Wedding Secrets Unveiled podcast, friends. So I got a question for you. Have you began to explore a little bit about your budget? Have you thought a little bit about your VIPs? Have you even began to even think about where to start with your wedding planning? There's so many resources out there. I mean, obviously you're listening to us right now, so thank you so much for letting Wedding Secrets Unveiled be one of your resources. But today's guest is possibly another resource for you. They are two industry leaders that teamed up to write the book Guide to Smart Wedding Planning. Their name is Edna and Jeri, and they are the real deal wedding insiders. Today, we're going to be talking about the book that just hit the shelves, which is a wonderful resource for all of you planning a wedding or know someone who's planning a wedding. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my informative conversation with the author of Guide to Smart Wedding Planning, both Edna and Jeri. Well, welcome back to Wedding Secrets Unveiled podcast, friends. So let's just dive right into it. I would love for you ladies to introduce to our listeners who you are, who you serve, and what you do in your business.
Absolutely. I am Jeri Solomon, and my company is Jeri Solomon Floral Design, and I do flowers for weddings, mostly in the Boston area, and I mostly serve clients that love a classic, timeless style.
Perfect.
And I am Edna Dratch Parker, and my company is called EFD Creative Event Planning and Design. I'm a wedding planner and designer, and I work out of Boston, Newport, Berkshires, all around New England. And, you know, I work with clients that want to have exceptional events and having fun doing it.
So tell our listeners what brought you two together and why are we here today?
We're here today because Edna and I, as collaborators in business and developing a friendship, we created the Real Deal Wedding Insiders. Together, we are the Real Deal Wedding Insiders, and we wrote a book called Guide to Smart Wedding Planning.
We have a lot of history together, Jeri and I. We're both event professionals in the Boston market, and we really had a lot of conversations about what was going on and how we could best get information out there. And that's, you know, we have built a friendship, but through that came this book and this brand.
And for our listeners, can you let them know again the brand and the name of your book?
Sure. Our brand is Real Deal Wedding Insiders, and our book is called Guide to Smart Wedding Planning.
And where can they find a copy of this book?
We are available on Barnes & Noble online, in select Barnes & Nobles in the Boston area. We are on Amazon, and we are in the paper store and online at the paper store, and in select paper stores in the New England area.
And we are also wherever books are sold online. Basically, you can find us, just type us in.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And
you
then
could go to your local bookstore. You could go to your local bookstore and ask them to order it for you as well. They can get it that way.
Perfect. And then for our listeners, we are giving away a complimentary copy of both Edna and Jeri's book. So hop on to our social media and see how you possibly can get your hands on a complimentary copy. So with that said, ladies, tell me a little bit about how we got into this collaboration and how you even began to even think about writing the book.
Well, Jeri and I we're both event professionals, we're great friends, and we talk a lot and sort of discuss all the things that are going on in the industry. And we got to a point years ago, it's been a while now, and we got to a point where we were absolutely frustrated on certain things. Like, people out there just didn't have the right information, and there's just so much information. How do you go through it and figure out what's really right for you? And so we just, during this conversation, at some point, one of us, and we still don't know to this day who it was, one of us said, we should write a book. And the other person said, yeah, we should write a book. And we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. But I'm the type of person, when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. So I start it and I finish it. And we wrote this book, and it wasn't an easy journey, but we really wanted to take the information that we both had and be able to pass that along. We just felt like, being professionals that work in the trenches, seeing what's going on day in and day out, we wanted to give the real information out there. So that's kind of the quick story to how we got moving on the book.
I love it. That's sort of kind of how I started the podcast, right? It's the same thing. I mean, I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I just wanted to bring something to my listeners direct from the industry insiders, and I wanted them to hear it from our voices, right? Real people out in the field. What is the main reason for the book? And tell me a little bit about the book.
So the main reason for this book is to give people who are planning a wedding a foundation of where to start. We find that so many people are just overwhelmed by the process, and we wanted to break it down step by step. It really takes someone from the moment of engagement through walking down the aisle, and we wanted to give them step by step instructions on how to make the process a little easier, things to look out for, and make them feel like they are a more educated consumer, so that then when they speak to vendors or look at venues or talk to parents, that they're a little more prepared for how the journey might go.
So this book is really meant for the individuals or couples who are actually planning a wedding, and something that they read prior to taking down the walk down the aisle.
Exactly. And there are different, you can be at the very beginning of your planning process, and this book will be amazing, but also you could be halfway through and this book will still work for you. Like, we have 7 chapters, and you can find the spot where you need to go from. I mean, we just spoke with someone who's getting married in a few months, and they got a copy of the book, and they just want to know about the last chapter, like how to the big day. So it can be in different pieces. Really, you can thumb through it and find what's applicable to you.
I think it would also be helpful to other people that are involved in the planning process. So a parent, a mom, a dad. I think it's a great way for them to understand maybe how weddings have changed. We have a whole section about that. And really, if they're part of the process, it will help them as well.
So ladies, why is your book called Guide to Smart Wedding Planning?
Yes. So for 2 reasons. One, we want to help people be smarter and make smarter choices and be smart about their planning process. And also, SMART is an acronym, and it stands for, S stands for specific, M stands for manageable, A stands for articulated, R stands for realistic, and T stands for timely. And we set that up we hope that these couples have all of those pieces when they're making all the various decisions that have to be done in their wedding planning journey.
So Jeri, you talked a little bit about all of the pieces. Can you give our listeners a little nugget from your book, a little tip?
So a little nugget. We have the 3 C's in our book as well. And the 3 C's to wedding planning, which also could be for any planning in your life, are communicate, comprehend, and calculate. And at every point in the process, I would say it's really important to just kind of put those 3 C's onto whatever you're working on. Have you communicated it with your partner or with other important people, with your vendors? Do you comprehend? Do you understand who you're hiring or what the contract means or why you need to do XYZ, and calculate, which is one of the most important yet basic pieces of a wedding puzzle, is calculate how much money it's going to cost or even how much time you're going to spend on it.
I think you just hit a big one, right? And that is the last C, calculate.
That is the biggest pain point, and I'm sure you know this, Sarah, that is the biggest pain point for couples planning weddings.
The budget is the biggest hurdle that I have as a wedding planner, because people come to me and they have these expectations. They think they have this chunk of money and they're so excited and they can get all the things that they see on Pinterest and these opulent, beautiful, extravagant weddings. And I feel like I'm always the bearer of bad news, and I have to sit there and explain, like, okay, now this is how the budget works, and this is what, the market that you live in, and unfortunately, Boston is one of the highest. Boston and New England is one of the highest cost for weddings in the nation, outside of like New York and LA, and so I have to really explain to people what they cost, and so there's that huge learning curve, and that was another reason why we wanted to write this book, because these conversations that we were having with people about budgets and just always hearing the disappointment in people's voices, that's one of the things that I take a little bit of pride in. It's like, okay, how can we give them this great wedding, and how can we figure out how to work the budget with them, and think outside the box.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. One of the first things that I hear, and I still hear, is the common, I didn't know that this is how much everything cost. I think there is definitely a sticker shock, and it's okay, and it's normal. And for everybody who's listening, I'm sure you're nodding our heads, because first off, people don't do this on a daily basis, right? We do every weekend, but it's not. I mean, if someone called me up and told me that they're an expert at getting married, I would be like, okay. Fair enough. That's a whole podcast episode right there. But a lot of times this is somebody's first or second time doing this, and they've done it. If they have done it a second time, it's something that was many, many years ago. Or I hear a lot of times parents of the couple say, well, when I got married, it's just a different beast, right? So it's really hard to understand where to even start and where to even budget. So do you guys cover this in your book?
It's funny that you mentioned that about then and now, because we do have a section in our book that has a chart about the way weddings used to be 30 years ago and how they are now, because most of these people's parents are, got married in the 80s or the 90s, and it was completely different. It was like, oh, here's your basket of napkins. Pick which color you would like. Is it fish or chicken? And so, it's a completely different situation these days. So yes, I think that the budget is such a huge, monstrous thing, and it is important that people really understand. They have to really take time to think it through and figure out the budget. It's important.
The budget chapter is our largest chapter in the book. So to answer your question, Sarah, yes, we do cover it. And what we do is it's very broad, because we recognize that a wedding in New England is going to be different than a wedding in another part of the country. So we really try to break it down in such a way that there's information there for people who are planning a very small wedding in a rural area, or somebody planning a very grand wedding in a cosmopolitan area, because fundamentally the budget, you have to look at the budget the same way, no matter what size event you're planning. So we do give very universal types of ways to look at it. Yeah.
Correct, because, it is said that about 50% of couples go over budget.
Right.
Or more.
That's horrifying. And I think nobody wants that to happen. And I think that a lot of people think that, oh, we have to do it because we have to have such a grand wedding because we saw all the celebrity weddings on the social media. And we really want people to understand how to break down their priorities. And we help make suggestions about that as well.
Well, girls, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, I would love to talk a little bit about the statement, why it's your day, you can do whatever you want to, is really not that true. And how to work with a little bit of your VIPs. I would love to kind of go back into the book and give our listeners a little insight. I appreciate you being here. And hey, if you like what you're hearing, I encourage you to check out our website at sarahzarella.com. And don't forget, you can actually subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. And I would so appreciate if you left a fabulous review on Apple Podcast. Even better, share it with a friend. It's a great way to show your support. And now, let's get back to the episode. Well, welcome back to Wedding Secrets Unveiled podcast, friends. So, before the break, we were talking with Edna and Jeri a little bit about their book, Guide to Smart Wedding Planning. And I would just love, ladies, for you to myth bust the myth of it's your day, you can do whatever you want to. Tell me why that is just so not true.
It's not true. As a wedding planner, and I'm there on site and I see what's going on, the wedding is for everybody who's there. You want to make sure your guests are comfortable. You want to make sure that the timeline is working. There's so many elements and pieces that, you can't just say to yourself, I'm going to get up when I want, or I'm going to do the makeup when I want, or I'm going to have this day be exactly as I want. Like, you definitely want to fit in the things that you want. And that's why we create timelines. So you have the ability to fit in, like maybe you want to sneak a moment away with your new spouse, or you want to have certain conversations. But if things are not planned carefully, you just can't run amok and run around and just do what you want. So it's really important to take the time to put together the timeline, have the timeline, and you can obviously, sway from it a little bit, but make sure that you're staying focused.
So I would say that, especially if somebody else is helping you pay for your event, that person becomes a stakeholder, number one. Number two, as much as it's the day for the couple and it's the beginning of their lives together, it's also the day for all the people who are there. And that can be your parents and your grandparents, and it can also be your guests. So to Ed's points about it being, you want your guests to feel comfortable and things like that. In our book, we have chapter 2, which is called The Committee, which people don't really think about, but we call the committee are the people that help you plan your wedding, whether you like it or not. And so
sorry, Jeri, I'm just laughing because you're like, whether you like it or not is the truth. And it's not to interrupt you, but you know what's so funny is that I just was dealing with this yesterday. I was talking to one of Dan and I's couples, and we were doing the timeline and finalizing things, and a wonderful couple. However, the mother, and I don't say however in a bad way, just the mother-in-law is helping bring their dream to fruition. So, but with that said, she has a voice now because it really is her pocket, right?
Yes.
It is what it is. And I'm not saying that this particular bride and groom did not like the fact. I'm just saying we now have a third personality in the mix.
And you have to respect that, or don't take their money. And I would say, I don't know the exact number, but I think it's close to 80% of couples have somebody else helping them pay. So it's bratty otherwise.
And it's not always the people who are putting money towards the wedding. I mean, in my family, we have some elderly people, and we have to make decisions, and they're part of the committee. They don't even know it because there's things that are important that we know we have to accommodate for other people. So there's the people that pay, and they have voices, and then there's the quiet voices of things that you have to make decisions about based on the importance of people around you and making sure you're doing the right thing by those people.
An example of that might be something like the grandparent who insists or really, really wants the couple to be married in a house of worship, even though the couple might not be that interested in that. That's something to honor a family tradition.
And you know what? It's a little fun fact for our listeners. Actually, Edna and I go back many years ago. I met you, Edna, when you were first starting in the industry and actually photographed your parents' 50th anniversary, right? So I know your family when you said you have a big family, right? But most people are. And kind of what you were saying, Jeri, too, there's a lot of personalities. So even if you're not paying the bill, there's a lot of personalities. One of the beautiful things about a wedding day is you are getting everybody together, sometimes for the first and the last time, right? I mean, because, yes, you might have other celebrations, but usually those celebrations are on either side, right? But right now, as a couple, you are bringing your two families together. So there's a lot of different train of thoughts, right? Like some people are like, they see that budget, they see that number, like that dollar sign, and they're like, let's just run away and elope. But then a lot of people are like, no, like this is, yes, it's one day, but it's one day which creates a ton of lifelong memories, right? So you want to make it the best day, but you have a budget. And that's why, reaching out to, hence why you all listen to this podcast or reaching out to the book that you guys all wrote. But, like you said, flipping through certain chapters but also, too, going back to what chapter is the committee underneath in your book? Remind me again.
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2. So going back to chapter 2, this committee. Jeri, talk to me a little bit about this committee that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so we break it down into bankroller and VIPs. And then we also have a special category called judgers, because there's sometimes people who have opinions that maybe are uninvited. And yet they're always going to have their opinions, and you have to be ready for them.
So I want to know who came up with these titles. Which one of you ladies did? Because I kind of like them.
I'm pretty sure I did actually on that part. Because when I talk to my clients, a lot of times I always thought of it as a committee. And when I talk to my clients in the floral process, sometimes there's differences of opinions between a bride and a mom or something like that. And I said, okay. And I'll say, okay, this is not the time to decide this. You all need to go back to the committee and have a meeting and just get back to me with the decision. And people would laugh at that, but it's true. You have a committee, whether you
like it or not.
Whether you like it or not. I already said that.
So when I got into the business, I met Jeri, and she's a florist. And we started working together on some events. And once we got to know each other, we started realizing, wow, we have all these unusual things in common. Our husbands are named Jim. We grew up in neighboring towns. Our fathers were both medical doctors in the army and stationed in France. And both of them had their first daughters born in France, me being one of them. So that's a very unusual thing to have that connection. And they knew each other through the profession, once they were both back in the States. And we have just all these very unusual things.
So we kind of knew that we started having these connections. And then one day I was at my aunt's home in a retirement community, and I was helping her plan her anniversary party. And we were in kind of this public space of this retirement home, and we were planning out the space and talking. And I noticed that there was a woman off to the side really watching us. And I'm thinking, who is this woman? And why is she being so nosy? And eventually the woman approached us and she said, are you planning a party? And my aunt said, why, yes, it's for my anniversary. And this is my niece, and she's in the wedding business, so she's helping. And then this other woman says, really? My niece is in the wedding business. And I said, really? Who's your niece? Knowing before the words came out of her mouth what she was going to say, she said, my niece is a wedding planner, and her name is Edna Dratch Parker. And I said, I know Edna Dratch Parker. So when I left that day from my aunt's, I texted Edna and I said, Aunt Mary says hello. And of course, the phone rang within seconds, and there was just another connection. So we both love our families and know that when weddings come together, it is about bringing families together. And a fun little fact, our book is dedicated to both of our aunts. So if you get the book, you can read that on the dedication page.
And I might add that my aunt is 100 years old, and she's still with us, and she's doing amazing.
You got great genes over there, Edna.
I hope so. I hope so. And in terms of family, when I first got married back a while ago, I had something that happened, and it really formed the way I moved forward with wedding planning and how I approached weddings with my couples. And that is, my husband, 6 weeks to the day before we got married, got into a terrible motorcycle accident, spent a lot of time in Massachusetts General Hospital, and there was a lot of touch and go going on at the time. And once we knew that he was going to be okay, and this is just going to be a bumpy road, and we knew the wedding was still on, it just really changed the whole way that we moved forward thinking about the wedding. Like, it didn't, when I was still working on my cake. So when my cake maker called me and asked me questions, I'm like, you know what, just do whatever you want. It's going to be gorgeous. And I started just realizing all that really matters is the love, the family being together, and we're both here and we can have this future together. And I think that, as I go through with my couples and working with them, I try to always, sort of sprinkle that in, because people get so stressed. We're doing so many different, we're making all these different decisions, and everybody's, heightened, emotions are heightened. And I just want to bring people down and say, listen, let's get our feet back on the ground. And remember, you found your person, and that's really exciting. And, if things don't go exactly as we planned, that doesn't matter, because you're going to have this amazing life together.
This is a great way to segment right into a little bit about your brand together, because obviously, Edna, you have had quite a journey from the day you got married and then to where you are now, giving back to the community. And then you guys teamed up, and it sounds like there was a lot of signs, right, for you two to be together and team up and write this book. But tell our listeners a little bit about your brand and where you guys see yourself going now after the book.
We are the Real Deal Wedding Insiders, and we see ourselves continuing to give couples planning weddings good, solid, real information that can help them. So we have a workbook in the works. We're building out our website. We're only just beginning, and we're really excited about it because we feel it's really needed. It's really needed to have. There's so much information out there, and a lot of it is great and a lot of it isn't. And we want to give people the good information, like you do too, Sarah, right?
Yeah, I think so. I make sure that what we put on here for our listeners is direct from your voice. That's why it's called Wedding Secrets Unveiled. We're unveiling some tips and tricks, and it's coming from the same. This came from the same place that it sounds like that you guys are coming from. It's just for you. It looks like you guys. It sounds like to me you're putting some tangibles in the hands of people to read, and really you're cutting through all the noise and letting them see something visual, which is great. And that in itself is super helpful for me. It went for the ears, the listening of the ears. I wanted to cut out the noise and make sure that like you said, like you are the real deal wedding insiders, and you want to give them the real deal, right? So for our listeners, they can definitely check out our show notes, which will have all your information and all your links, so that way they can kind of start to follow you and see what you can bring to them. So ladies, it's time for our wrap-up question. What are some key points to smart wedding planning that couples can take away from reading your book to ensure that their wedding day is an absolute perfect event?
I would say the three big things are: keep your spend on food, beverage, and venue under 50% of your total budget. Build your guest list early on in your process before you do anything else. And make sure you're hiring really good wedding professionals that will do a great job for you. In terms of keeping your spend on food, beverage, and venue under 50%, this is really important because a lot of times people will spend more than that. And that's usually the first thing that people are booking. And then they don't have enough money for all the other vendors. Most couples can have as many as 10 or 12 or 15 vendors, and you want to have enough money to spend on those vendors as well as your food and beverage.
And another important key thing that Jeri mentioned here is building the guest list. And when people get engaged, they're so excited. They start telling all these people, and they kind of inadvertently sometimes are inviting people that maybe they wouldn't really be inviting because they're just so excited. Like, you'll have to come to the wedding. And then they realize, oh, I just mentioned that to so many people. So you have to really ask yourself, like, who's coming? And you need to make your two lists, your A list and your B list. And the A list is the people that must have, there's no turning back, they must be there. And the B list is to make sure that people are, those are the people that you'd love to have there, but you're not sure you can. And whatever you do, don't let anyone know they're on the B list. And I think it's really important to take your time and make sure you include everybody, all the sides of the families, and really hear what everyone has to say, and really put together a thoughtful list, and then you trim it down from there.
And then the ways to find good vendors. Definitely check reviews and understand the overall tenor of those reviews. One bad review doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad vendor. It might mean that the client was in a bad mood. Ask the vendors you have hired who their favorites are, because vendors like to work with their colleagues that they know, like, and trust and think do a good job. And lastly, really important to trust your gut. Even if this person has really great reviews or everybody says they're amazing, they might not be right for you. And so it has to be a right fit for you. And those would be my tips on vendors.
I think those are amazing tips. And I want to thank you both very much for joining me on this week's episode of Wedding Secrets Unveiled. You helped our listeners become one step closer to their journey of a stress-free wedding planning. Can you tell everyone where they could find you?
Sure. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for having us. It's really nice to be on a podcast that kind of aligns with how Edna and I feel. We can be found at realdealweddinginsiders.com. That is our website. From there, you can also find my business and Edna's business. And we are active on Instagram at Wedding Insiders, and on TikTok at Real Deal Wedding Insiders.
And you can find us in stores, and you can always reach out to us. We also work with other vendors that we have venues who have purchased our book and gives it out to all of the new couples they onboard. And Sarah, thank you to you. So kind that you got a nice box of books and you're passing them out to all of your couples, and that really means the world to us, because that's the ultimate compliment. And we just are just excited to have it and get it into the hands of people who are able to gain this information and make better decisions and have amazing days.
You're very welcome, ladies. I am just a true supporter and supporting the community. And for all those listeners, if you are one of Sarah, myself, and Dan's brides, you are getting a complimentary copy on us. We have purchased copies for you, and they are being sent out to you all. And for our listeners, I will put both Edna and Jeri's information on our episode show notes, which you can find on our blog and also on our website, which is at sarahzarella.com/podcast. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining me on this week's episode of Wedding Secrets Unveiled. And I look forward to chatting again.
Great to see you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Wedding Secrets Unveiled. I appreciate you being here. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, I want to tell you something. I encourage you to check out our website at sarahzarella.com. We love photographing while having fun, of course. Check out our podcast page on our website for our show notes, along with upcoming episodes with your local wedding experts. Listen in as we help you plan your epic event. And don't forget that you can actually subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening, so you never miss an episode. I would so appreciate if you left a review for us on Apple Podcasts. Even better, share it with a friend. It's a great way to show your support, and let us know what you think. If you know any wedding experts that would like to be a guest, we have a link directly on our website where they can let us know. Thank you for listening.